before? Just have one. All right. Well, one of the most memorable occasions, and actually Jim's got a video of it, is Brad Teague throwing pancakes approximately 50 yards whilst somebody was behind him and catching it and so on. So Richie and Brad always, when we've got the pancake cookers going strong, they always do who can flip and catch the most. So I think most of you already know a lot about our speaker. How many of you ever been into our office over on Prairie Street? Okay, remember that big old generator that is there and so on? And the stories I heard is back, way back a while ago in the 1920s or 30s. So they cranked that guy up. And at 9 o'clock, I think it was 8 o'clock in the morning, and then at 9 o'clock at night, they would turn it off, and all the lights in Conway would go off. But that kind of brings up a good point as to what our business really is. It's something to be expected. When you see lights going on day and night, that's about 50 years, 60 years ago, that wasn't the case. So we are in an industry of utilities where probably a lot of people accept what we provide. You've got clean water, we've got great sewer system, believe it or not. We provide a lot, and you rarely hear much about it. As a matter of fact, it's the more quiet we can be sometimes, the better off we are. When we got into the telecommunications part, though, we started heavily advertising because we wanted to really project out what some of the optional services we have. Let me read to you really quickly our mission at Conway Corporation. We're dedicated to exceeding our customers' expectations in producing and delivering safe, affordable, reliable, innovative, and environmentally sound utility and telecommunication services while enhancing the quality of life in our community. That's a lot of words. But let me give you a quote. And it's basically a quote that says, people buy into a leader before they buy into the vision. And so a lot of what we've done really represents our leadership in our company, and what Richie and the others, and George and so on, have really done. I will never forget, the first year I came, we had a downtown partnership meeting, and they had done a study on the good things about Conway. And it was an outside group, and the number one thing at the downtown partnership was Conway Corporation. I tell you, that as a brand new employee, that made me extremely proud. It really did. But again, the company reflects the leadership, and I think Richie has just led us right into a wonderful era for Conway. And with that, please welcome Richie Arnold.
Thank you, Dan. That was 100% not at all what I gave you.
So later on to do it.
He works for him. And you know, Brett Carroll works for me. Where's Brett? Had a better offer.
I'm sure he breaks the curtain.
Yeah. Brett, as you know, Brett Carroll is my former CFO. He's going to have some extended turkey hunting season this year. Anyway, it's always a pleasure and a challenge to speak to this club, I tell you. But it's a good time and a good group of people, and I really enjoy being a Rotarian, and I never tire of coming here. And you know, when I do come, it's kind of hard to decide what to talk about because, as Dan pointed out, you know, electric, water, wastewater, cable TV. Well, I ruled the electric out right off the bat because Jim Garland's sitting back there, and he knows more about that than anybody. So I'm not going to talk about electricity because I don't want Jim asking hard questions I can't answer. And, you know, I thought about the cable TV stuff, but that's highly technical. And, that just seemed too challenging. And then Dan told me, he said, well, speak about water and sewer because that's the theme. Water and sanitation was going to be the theme for February. Well, that was when I was scheduled to give this talk, so I did a nice talk on water and wastewater, I thought, and then he kicked me all the way back to March. So this is not timely. It's not exactly the theme, but it was February's theme, right? Okay, so I was well prepared for February, and I'll just give you my February talk today in March, if that's okay. You know, this club has been invested in water. I mean, the projects that have been headed up by Senator Rayford and Brett Carroll and Mike Pike, and I'm sure there's others, and I don't want to leave anybody out that have made that journey to Africa and have been involved in trying to bring water to those areas. I read something that says 1 in 10 people lack access to safe water. 1 in 3 lack access to a toilet. Which, I mean, we don't want to talk about that, but that's the world. I mean, we're blessed. We are so blessed to be here in this country and not know anything but what we know. I mean, we're very fortunate. I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to talk a little bit about water and wastewater, kind of tell you where we're at, how we plan for that, and then I'm going to open it up to the extent I have time for questions after Dan's introduction. I may not, but I'm sorry, Dan. I don't get an opportunity to tease Dan a lot in public, so this is the chance. I'm going to kick it off. I think many of you that have lived here for any length of time are aware that James H. Brewer Lake, and it was named for a former club member and my predecessor, twice removed, James H. Brewer. It's in Conway County, north of Plummerville. That lake is a great water resource, and you know, when they did the lock and dam on the Arkansas River, they backed the river up into Cadner Creek, which was our source at that time. And the Corps of Engineers, because of Wilbur Mills, who was the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, got busy and tried to find us an alternative, and that's what this is. So thanks to Jim Brewer and our representative Wilbur Mills at that time, this is our water resource, our primary water resource. It provides us 12.6 million gallons per day of firm yield, which probably means absolutely nothing to you. It is, let's see where my slides go. Yeah, the normal pool elevation is 330 feet mean sea level, which also really probably means nothing to you, which is 4 feet more than it was when we built the lake. We raised the level of the lake 4 feet a few years ago, back in 2002. I'm sorry, we evaluated it in 2002, we raised it in 2007. But anyway, those are some statistics. This is our primary water supply for the citizens of Conway. We also have some supplemental water. Many of you may not know this. We have an allocation out of Greers Ferry Lake through the Mid-Arkansas Water Alliance, of which we are a member. It's a little over 3 million gallons a day. And we also are pursuing another allocation, another 3 million gallon per day allocation, which we think will be finalized in 2017. We're doing this for a couple of reasons. One, the supply of Brewer is finite. We know that. It also gives us some diversity too. It gives us another resource. Should we have say a transmission line failure or a pump failure, it gives us another opportunity. We don't currently have any way to take water from Greers Ferry except for an emergency tie that we have on the east side of town with Community Water System. And we actually have used that. We supply them also. If they need water into their system, we can supply them. It works both ways. But we really don't have any infrastructure to bring that water to Conway. Of course, Cadner Creek, we mentioned that earlier. That was the original water supply. It's basically the Arkansas River because of there used to be a weir that separated the two bodies of water. It had erosion around that has taken place, and it's really the river. You can treat that though. I mean, it can be used and has been used, but it's an emergency only basis. We do have the opportunity to acquire additional buffer on either side of the river and make it a part of our supplemental supply if we choose to. We treated it at the Roger Q. Mills water treatment plant at Gleason, just before you, if you're going out 64 towards Morrilton, just before you cross the creek, it's on your left. It's named for Roger Q. Mills, who was our chief operating officer for many years, and capable of treating 24 million gallons per day. It was constructed in 2004, and it was designed in such a way that we can add another 8 million gallons to it. I'm sorry, no, it increased our capacity at that time by 8, but we can increase our total capacity at that plant to 32 if we choose to. So we've got some opportunity to grow that facility if we need to. This is what I do. People ask me, you know, what do you do? And George especially asks that question. But I have to plan. I have to look to the future. That's a big part of what I do. And that involves looking at our population trends. That involves understanding how much water people use. And so this is an example here of just looking at historic population. Oh, that's what this is for. Jim gave me this, historic population. And then some projections on different scenarios. And you can see the dashed line there. That's the trend based on our history. And then I look at some different growth scenarios to give me some alternatives. Then I plot out water demand. This is the historic water demand. This is the gallons per capita day based on the population of the city over the last few years. And you can see it's trending down. When we evaluated our capacity at Brewer Lake, that study was done in 1999. You can see we used as I think the 177 gallons per capita day was what we believed the average was. Look what's happened. This past year was 136. It's a big difference. How do you account for that? And I think by and large, it's a couple of things, but it's higher efficiency appliances, toilets, washing machines, dishwashers, those kind of things. It's also a change in our demographics. Our families are smaller. You're not seeing as many single-family homes. You've got more multifamily, which those people don't irrigate. They don't have lawns that they sprinkle and those kinds of things. So I think that's the way I would explain that without any more information, without digging any deeper. It's something that's being, it's national trend too. I mean, we're not unique in this. But anyway, I looked at my growth, I've looked at our water demand, and then I come through and I look at this line here. You can see this is the current level of the lake. You can see I bumped it up there in 07. And then these are future growth in Brewer Lake only that we could do. We could raise that level again another 3 times if we chose to. And then I plot out, my water demand. This is actual, and this is some different scenarios. And you can see the trend there takes us on out to about 2036, which is not that far off, if you think about it. I mean, but under different scenarios, drought years, it'll be sooner that we'll actually reach that capacity. So we have to continue to pursue the opportunity at Greers Ferry Lake. Because it's going to be very expensive. You're going to be at a crossroads here on whether or not you raise that lake or whether you go to Greers, because raising the lake is not that easy. You got to move a lot of infrastructure, raise our intake, and maybe build a bridge on the highway below because of the potential of bringing the overflow situation in the high water could actually jeopardize the bridge below the lake. But anyway, this is how I use to plan for the water stuff, and that's based on 2.5% growth, which we're not actually experiencing that right now. I don't know, Ed, if you've gotten familiar, but we're a little off what we were back in the go-go years. I think the last, probably since 08, we've been averaging a little over 1%, more like 1.5%, but that's using a 2.5% growth rate. Everybody's talking about Flint, Michigan, and that is a unique situation that took place there. But I think it's important that we understand what we do here. At Flint, they switched water sources. They went from Lake Huron to the Flint River, and after that, they found unsafe levels of lead in their drinking water. Well, lead joints were used in pipes for years until they were banned in 1986. So it's very likely if your home was built in the early 80s or before, you probably have some lead joints, some lead solder in the plumbing in your home. We also had some lead joint pipe solder in our system in some of the older parts of town. It's my understanding Flint actually had lead pipe, which I'm not aware that we had any lead pipe. But, so you do have lead in your system. You may have it in your home. And so what is required by the EPA and the Department of Health is that you have a corrosion control program in place and running all the time. And we use sodium hexametaphosphate at about 0.9 parts per million. And what that does, that coats the inside excuse me, of that pipe and prevents that lead from leaching into the water. We also try to remain a neutral pH. But that's where Flint dropped the ball. They, and we continue to hear more about that. I don't know, I saw something just this week where the man who was in charge of that admitted that he was told by a state official not to have a corrosion control program, that they had to wait a year and evaluate what they needed to do, which is absolutely incorrect. So, incompetence. The Flint River is 19 times more corrosive than Lake Huron, and to not have a corrosion control program is just unconscionable. But anyway, we're in a testing cycle. We test our system at designated sites every 3 years. We also sample continuously throughout the year, but we're required by the Department of Health to do a 3-year monitoring, and we're in that year. So in June we'll be doing some sampling on our water system. Wastewater. Of course, I think most of you know Tupelo Bio was built in 2014, or came online in 2014, and it's located on Wally Road, 16 million gallons per day capacity, and it replaced Stone Dam Treatment Plant, which was near Verco off of Sturgis Road, if you know where that is. Designed by Garber Engineers and constructed by PC Construction. It can be doubled in capacity. If you look at the footprint here, we can actually basically double this capacity, just mirror it on the other side. So it ultimately can be 32 million gallons per day. Someday it will be the only treatment plant in the city. We still operate Tucker Creek, but someday they will phase that out and this will be the only treatment plant, I believe. And of course, Tucker Creek, it's a different treatment technology, uses aerated lagoons and has a rated capacity of 6.4. Came online in '96. I believe someday they'll mothball this, maybe use those lagoons as overflow basins or something like that, but that'll probably be after my time. It'll be somebody else's decision. So in summary, we've got some water capacity that's expected to take care of us for another 10 to 14 years, depending on growth, depending on drought conditions, those kinds of things. Of course, Greer's Ferry is on the horizon. We're going to tap it when it makes sense, but it's good to get that allocation. When we get an allocation like that, we actually are buying storage from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So we're going to continue to pursue that, because if you think about it, you're not ever going to build another lake, and Brewer's finite. So we believe that's important. Of course, Cadre Creek, you can't discount it. I mean, it's there. We've got an intake there. We maintain it. We can acquire some buffer and possibly use it to supplement if we need to during those drought years. And on the treatment side, Roger Q. Mills will be adequate without any improvements for another 8 years, and then we can increase it by a third when we need to. Wastewater capacity is adequate, we believe, until 2048, and of course then can be increased by 43% by decommissioning the Tucker Creek facility and doubling the Tupelo Bio. So you can see we've got facilities in place. We've got things that we have to do at some point in the future, probably on the supply side sooner maybe than later, but that depends on that trend. That depends on where our growth is going, and it depends on too, what kind of water demand what kind of water trend we see. This is, we continue to monitor this, and with the goal of making sure we've got adequate supply and treatment capacity. With that, I will take questions. I've run through that quickly as I promised I would, but I found that when I speak to this club, some of the best opportunities are when I just get to talk to you. And water and sewer are not always the most interesting parts of our business, but doggone it, they're important. We do take them for granted, but they're pretty darn important. Binko, I hesitate to call on you. So it's a very high risk.
I'm your plant in the audience.
Oh, okay.
New utility hookups. What do you see? Is there a trend? Are we growing? Are we stable? What do you see?
Well, he asked about new utility, what kind of growth trends we're seeing. And quite honestly, it's pretty flat. It has been that way for quite a while. And, the Great Recession, or whatever you want to call it, seemed to be the onset of that. And, if you ask a city planner, the building permits have been way off what they were in the go-go days, Some of that I think you can attribute to the recession. But again, the population numbers are not what, the growth numbers, the growth rate is not what we used to see either. So more multifamily, less single family. That's what we're seeing. See, Pat, did you have your hand up?
Yes. Do you have the capacity to handle new industries? Were we to get an industry such as an automobile plant or a gun making factory that are very high water consumers? Some of the plants I built water treatment systems for will use
Food
millions,
processors. Food processors are notorious.
Food processor is a very good example.
Yeah.
Do you have the capacity to take care of it?
Honestly, no. I don't believe that's our sweet spot. You can see we've got surface water, and it's finite. You could possibly, we do have, a little bit of headroom right now. We could recruit one, that use quite a bit of water. We're blessed right now. We really don't have any big water users. Tokuson is our largest water customer, I believe, and really in their processes, where they wash the metal after it's been, extruded or pulled or whatever, but they don't use a great deal of water, relatively speaking. But I've got colleagues in other cities that have a lot of food processors, and they're using groundwater for the most part, wells, and that at times seems like easy pickings, but as we all know, these aquifers are being challenged. So I don't know. I just don't think that's strategic for us to be recruiting those kinds of industries. I think would be a mistake, because I think it would jeopardize our ability long term to serve our traditional growth, which is more university, more small business. But who knows?
So if Kia or Hyundai were considering building a plant in this area, you would discourage Conway from going after that business?
I didn't say that. You put words in my mouth. I told you it wouldn't be strategic for us. Yeah. It also wouldn't be strategic for us on the power side. I mean, think about it. Think about the financial risk of those kinds of investments that you have to make to serve one customer. And how loyal is that one customer? What happened to the state of Mississippi when Toyota decided, we changed our mind? Look at the investment that they made in that area. So I don't know. I think you got to, I'll be honest with you, I'm really concerned with the amount of public investment in a lot of the infrastructure needs for, jobs. I don't think that's a sustainable place to be. It's very risky. You take a community as small as Clinton, Arkansas, who builds a wastewater treatment plant to serve a poultry processor who then closes their doors, and the rest of the ratepayers have to pay off the debt. You know this better than I do. And that's what I worry about, is that, you know, in our zest for creating jobs, we forget financial risk. And it's there. It's part of, you know, it's part of all those decisions. Sorry, I didn't mean to get off my soapbox, but you opened the door.
Hey, Rich, I noticed this morning that there was an article in the Log Cabin about Tyson's, that one of their, I have a grandson that works for Tyson.
Right.
That their goal is to cut their water usage by 7 or 8% in all their plants.
And that's great for them, but it's bad for that city that built the treatment plants and all the circle. So the debt has got to be paid for now by the remaining ratepayer. So that's what I'm talking about when I say risk. Ed?
Yeah, so I just moved from sunny Southern California where water is so plentiful that.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked up the stat, they use 106 gallons per day.
Per capita day.
Per
yeah.
capita per
Yeah.
day.
You saw we were like 135.
Right. I mean, 30 gallons difference. Is there a water conservancy push here in Conway? Should there be one in case we do have some sort of a drought? Also, is there an opportunity to export water to areas like Southern California?
Okay, let me see. Conservation,
The next
exportation. Conservation, honestly, you didn't compare the price to, compare the price here versus there, you know. I could get conservation started right now,
Yeah.
you know, when we double the price. You know, and we are going to, and you heard it here first, we are going to have a rate increase this year. We've got to. I mean, you know, we've looked at our financials, but honestly, conservation is something that you invoke here, at least, because of the nature of our water supply when you have a drought year. And we have a program that we follow that requires certain things be done. But you know, when you get into true conservation like they've got, you've got an inverted pricing model where the more you use, the more you pay. We've got a declining block rate. So it's just it's a whole, you know, it's a different way of doing business. And it's very risky for us to transfer to a system like you're doing where we actually charge more the more you use, because what do? You use less. So that means, you know, we're looking at the bucket of revenue that we've got to have to pay our debts and other things. And so if you start using less, guess what? Everybody's rates start going up, you know, across the board. So you can't transition from one place to the other easily here for conservation purposes. But as far as wholesaling water, we're, for the same reason we're talking about and recruiting industry, it's just not really strategic for us. I mean, if we do it, it's going to be on a very minor basis. You know, we did sell a little bit of water to community water a few years ago when they had to do some infrastructure improvements out here on their system that serves Mayflower. And we did that for a couple of months, 3 months. And we'll do that again sometime, but we're not going to do it because then that becomes part of your planning. You have to plan for them just like I plan for our indigenous growth. I have to plan for somebody else's because they become reliant on you. And again, I think it would be a distraction and really not beneficial to Conway. You know, which is who I work for. You know, I work for ConwayCorp. So, Roger.
This might be off your topic, but a lot of publicity on the power grid. You see,
You mean from
well,
cyber?
or locally, is that the problem?
Did Jim leave? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, you saw what happened in Ukraine. A month ago, 6 weeks ago, and they've now confirmed that it was cyber attack on the transmission operator's hardware. Now, of course, there's a lot of things in place, you know, in this country that try to safeguard against that, but I don't care what business you're in, you've got a cybersecurity policy, you're training people constantly, and even that sometimes is not enough. I heard one company today that got hacked, and it was infiltrated through their cybersecurity team. Somebody hacked them and stole all their customer information. It's a big deal, and to say that the electric industry is better than everybody else, I'm not going to say that. Who knows? I mean, I hope we are, but there are people that believe that the Chinese have already gotten through the back doors and they're just waiting. You know, if you read the right books, you couldn't sleep at night. You know, so I don't know, Roger. I wish I could tell you that no, we've got everything under control, but that's not. We take care of our little space, and we hope somebody else is taking care of theirs too. But there are efforts, and a lot of efforts put into that now, where it was not even thought about before. Am I crowd? I know I'm getting close, John.
Any plans for the old sewage treatment plant? What can be done with that?
You're talking about now Stone Dam, the one we closed? Not really. We've talked about different uses for it, but it's not anything that we have a need for right now. We'll sit on the property, and someday somebody will figure out what they need to do with it, but it's in mothballs right now.
Another trend I saw in California was solar panels. A lot of the government buildings would have solar panels. A lot of the big corporations would invest in solar panels. Colleges. Do you see that trend come to Conway, or has it already started here?
We have some residential applications, probably half dozen maybe. Shelley Mill happens to be one of them. But we're not seeing it as much here. I think I believe there was some renewable mandates in California legislated. They had to do it. In other words, they had to have a certain part of their needs met through a renewable portfolio. So I think it was a legislative thing there, which doesn't exist here. There's certainly no price incentive to do that. Shelley, would you agree? You're not making any money selling power to us, are you?
No, it doesn't store it. And so my husband, those of you who know my husband, when we first got it, we had to turn everything off in the whole house so we could watch it come back.
Yeah.
Which the meter will, if we
Yeah.
produce more than we use.
We-
That doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's, and the other thing here, I don't know what part of California you were in, but, we have more clouds here. Again, you're arid out there, so, we're a little bit marginal for economic solar. Just they opened a pretty good sized solar farm, which Entergy is a part of. And I think it was maybe 9 or 10 megawatts, George, do you remember? Oh, was it 72? I'm sorry. On how many acres? 160 or?
It's got to be 700.
Yeah, so, the power density here it takes a lot of acreage to, and we're just it's not as efficient. And, the clean power plant's still out there. Nobody knows what's going to happen. The court stated, the court's in limbo, it's in appeal, so, who knows what's going to happen there, but that's going to mandate all of us, have some renewables in our portfolio. So, that's going to change the whole ballgame, money-wise, too. Get ready. I'm telling you, it's going to cost our ratepayers a lot of money. But, maybe that's where we're at. But I have no way of knowing, but, if you told me it was 50%, I'd say, okay, I'll believe that. It's going to cost you 50% more. But I think we need to know that going in. That's really what it's all about. I'm sorry. Thank you. Bobby, you're too late.
Thank you, Richie. And for being here today, the club will be donating 50 newspapers to the Newspapers and Education Program at the Log Cabin in your honor, so thank you.